Honorable Ministers Salman Khurshid ji, Major Dalbir Singh ji, Harjeev Singh ji, Mr. Jerry Hulton, esteemed dignitaries, media representatives and guests. It is my privilege to be addressing the One Globe Knowledge Conference once again. The topic for this conference is a very thought-provoking one and one that covers a very wide canvas. I will limit myself to the education sector in India and the future course of this sector that can chart for us a developing nation. The Nobel laureate Amartya Sen has said, and I quote, "You need an educated, healthy workforce to sustain economic development." This is so right, and education, in my view, is sine qua non of development. No country can achieve sustainable economic development without substantial investment in human capital. Education enables people to understand themselves and the socio-cultural, political milieu that they live in. It improves the quality of their lives and leads to benefits not only to individuals, but the entire society. Education raises people's capacity to earn and raise their standard of living, and in the process helps in securing economic and social progress and improving income distribution. Health and nutrition is directly linked to awareness and education in a society. More educated men and women tend to invest more in their own health and the health of their children. Indeed, education may be the single most important personal determinant of a person's health and life expectancy. Education of the poor helps improve their food intake, not only by raising their incomes and spending on food, but also inducing them to make better, healthier choices. Needless to say that education in a society also generates and supports key institutions of government, the law, and the financial system, among others, all of which are essential for economic growth. Education at every level contributes to growth and development, and a recent study published in the journal Demography categorically states that improvements in education levels around the world have been key drivers of economic growth in developing countries. India, by ratifying the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, has agreed to be bound to provide for inclusive education. There remains, however, a lot to be done in this sphere. The education system needs to be reformed further to meet the needs of all students, regardless of their gender, quality, or disability. Our government has been paying special attention to this vital sector. As mentioned by Major Dalbir Singh ji, the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan is government's India's flagship program for achievement of universalization of elementary education in a time-bound manner, as mandated by 63rd Amendment to the Constitution of India, making free and compulsory education to the children of 6 to 14 years age group a fundamental right. Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan is being implemented in partnership with state governments to cover the entire country and address the needs of 192 million children in 1.1 million habitations. The program seeks to open new schools in those habitations which do not have schooling facilities and strengthen existing school infrastructure through provision of additional classrooms, toilets, drinking water, maintenance grant, and school improvement grants. Existing schools with inadequate teacher strength are provided with additional teachers, while the capacity of existing teachers is being strengthened by extensive training, grants for development, teacher learning materials, and strengthening of academic support structure at a cluster, block, and district level. Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan seeks to provide equal quality elementary education, including life skills. Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan has a special focus on girls' education and children with special needs. It also seeks to provide computer education to bridge the digital divide. Since the right to education was enacted in 2009, nearly 200 million children in 16 to 14 years age group have received free and compulsory education in India, and 120 million children have benefited from the midday meal scheme. As a result, the dropout rates in class 1 through 10 have come down, which has been a major achievement. The enrollment rates of primary and secondary education too have gone up. Even in terms of higher education, the enrollment has increased significantly. The need for emphasis on education is well understood by us today. The President of India, in his address to directors of National Institutes of Technology, said in November 2013, and I quote, "If we have to attain a growth rate of 9% per year, as has been envisaged during the 12-year plan period, we must put in place enabling factors, with most prominent of which is quality of higher education." In this regard, I also recall the words of the Honorable Prime Minister of India, who said, and I quote, "To fulfill India's growing economic requirements, our UPA government has given special attention to the education sector. It will be difficult to maintain the growth rate without this. We have increased the share of the education in GDP from 3.3% to 4%. We want more youngsters to get world-class education so that India's scientists and engineers can earn its place in the world. However, we also understand that India is home to 1/3 of the total number of illiterates in the world. This is a statistic in which no Indian would take pride. But in a country where nearly 70% of the population lives in rural areas, access to educational opportunities is difficult, and this handicap is amplified many times for the girl child. Add to this the social attitudes towards women, and it is obvious that we need a multi-pronged approach if we are to achieve education for women. It needs to be understood that women are the foundation of a basic unit of society, the family. Even in traditional roles, they demonstrate great innovation, skill, intelligence, hard work, and commitment. We need to address rather than focus on providing education to women and the girl child in particular. While certain development indicators show their quality of life is improving, maternal mortality rates declining, literacy rates increasing, more women gaining access to healthcare and education, the pace of change is still slow. India ranks 113 out of 135 in the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Index. According to India's 2011 census, the sex ratio for children under 6 was 914 females to 1,000 males, a disturbing decline from 927 in 2001. The ranking of Indian women in economic empowerment is 0.3, where 1.0 means equality. Denying women opportunities to realize their potential is a waste of human capital and a bar to economic progress. When we educate and empower one woman, we set off a chain reaction that transforms the life of her family and the community she lives in. An exemplary model is in the network of trained accredited social health activists, ASHA, created under the National Rural Health Mission, who have played a crucial role in improving the health of women and children across India. With over half the population of India under the age of 25, I have no doubt that the road to economy recovery starts at our schools. The Indian industry needs to aid the government and its schools to help build a nation of educated and skilled people. Converting India into a knowledge society shall require, inter alia, addressing the issue of expansion, excellence, and inclusion in education while formulating policies for achieving the same. The role of education in our lives was so delicately and emotionally put by Malala in the United Nations. She said, "We realize the importance of light when we see darkness. We realize the importance of our voice when we are silenced. And when the Taliban came to her and her classmates, she said, and I quote, "We realized the importance of pens and books when we saw the guns." Malala was speaking on her 16th birthday, and she urged the world community to wage a global struggle against literacy, poverty, and terrorism. Education, she said, is the only solution. And I could not agree more. Thank you.